Hello! According to my invisible watch, it is time for part 2 of this little two-part series here. This one's going to be a little tiny bit longer than the previous video, but I'm going to try and wrap this up short and quick and just say, hey, if you are curious of what's going on here, if you're curious of why this is part 2, then click the card above me, somewhere above me, I don't know where it is, and click it and it will send you to part 1 of this video. It doesn't necessarily totally matter if you watch that, but if you want to learn more about tabletop gaming and stuff like that and how to make them and what goes into making them and stuff like that, and especially if you want to learn it for like Ponytown related things and stuff like that, then definitely check out that video and check out this one as well, because we're going to go deeper into what it's like to make one and stuff like that and everything like that. We're going to give some tips, advice, and everything else in between. So I do hope that you're ready to learn a little bit more about strategy and what goes into that. So let's get started, and I will stop wasting your time. Let's get started. It's time on my invisible watch. Striking a balance for luck and strategy is a difficult thing to do. Trust me, I know. I've done many games in the past, but a good example of luck and strategy combined is barricade checkers. Barricade checkers allows you to roll out of 6, and then after that it determines how many spaces you can move. So for example, if I rolled 5, I get to move this fruit box 5 spaces. So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can do this. But since it's strategy based, because I get to choose how I move, I could, instead of doing that, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and just go here instead. Or I can do some other random thing and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and go down there, or so on and so on. You get the point. There's many options for me to move around and stuff like that. So I think this has a good balance of strategy and luck combined, because you need to get lucky to roll what you want to eliminate your opponent. For example, in this game, to eliminate an opponent, you have to get exactly above their carpet. So for example, if I'm over here, I'm very desperately going to want to roll like a 2 or some other number that will allow me to get above them. But if I don't roll that number, then that puts me at risk, because now I have to come up with some other way to move or some other thing to move, because otherwise they're going to be able to capture me in their turn. So I have to take that into consideration and figure out what to do. The point is, this game employs strategy and luck very well. I think it's very well balanced in that term. That's what I mean by striking a balance. There is obviously the luck element of, hey, I need to get really lucky to get this exact roll to get this benefit, but if I don't, then I still can employ strategy and move something else to ultimately help me in later turns. I think that's a good way to employ strategy, and it's actually a little bit easier than you think, but it's still pretty difficult to do. So let's go back to our example over here. Right now, the game is as simple as get to the last space with an exact roll and you win. So what's ways that we can change this game to make it to where we can employ strategy? One way we can do that is, if we equip our little hammer here again, we can put something like teleporters, or, well, not teleporters, but swappers. So if I put down this green carpet here and maybe another one over here and some over here, something like that, maybe if an opponent or any player in the game lands on a green space, they get to swap places with another player. Or alternatively, you can have it to where it gives you the option to move to any of the green spaces. So if this space over here in the top left has a huge benefit for me, then I would want to choose this one. However, if this one down here has a huge benefit for me, then I would choose this one. See, what I'm doing here is I'm giving the player choices. Choices is extremely good for your games when you want to employ strategy. Look at any strategy-based game you can think of, and every single one of them has many choices. For example, if we go up here to up here, what the fuck? If we go up here, we have checkers on the right and chess on the left. Both of these games do nothing other than give the player choices. With chess, you have tons and tons of choices right from the get-go. With checkers, you have, 1, 2, 3, 4 choices off at the get-go. So it's limited, but you still have several choices. And you can employ many different strategies because of those choices. The point is, give your players choices and they will find ways to strategize that. So again, another example would be something like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! You get several choices right out the get-go because you start with a 5-card hand or a 7-card hand in case of Magic the Gathering. So what I did here is I added a swapper. If a player lands on this, they get to swap places with another player. So if a player is, for example, all the way over here and I want to be closer to the goal, I can swap with them and allow me to get closer to the goal. Now this simple luck-based game has strategy and luck in it. But we can go even further and include more mechanics to allow more options. So let's start with what's another way we can add skill and everything like to this game. So what about another carpet that does something different? What if you land on this carpet, you get to set a trap or something like that. So I land on this blue carpet, let's say I get some random number and I get to land on this blue carpet. Maybe now I get to set a trap for an opponent. Where does this trap go? Maybe you give that completely 100% up to the player. They can put it anywhere except the final space, because obviously that's where you had to land to win. So let's say our traps are something like log slices and I want to trap this little thing up here. So I put like a thing there. Now if a player lands on it, maybe they lose a turn, or maybe they have to go back 3 spaces, or maybe they just end up getting sent to another random space. Maybe they get sent to the blue space or something like that. You can play, or maybe it sends them back to start, who knows. But the point is, you can set traps and do different things to them. If you have more mechanics to this game, such as like health or lives or something like that, maybe setting a trap hurts them or gets rid of their lives or something like that, and then boom, we have a more fully fledged game. Not fully fledged, obviously, it still needs lots of working and tweaking and stuff like that, but you definitely added a lot of mechanics to this game to make it more than just a luck-based game where you land on the last square. As you saw there, it was actually kind of easy, but it's actually really difficult, because you have to determine, hey, is this too many of these green spaces? Is this too many of the blue spaces? If enough people are landing on this blue space, is the entire board just going to be full of traps? How does that work? If someone passes the start, maybe you can remove one, something like that. And that's where you get into playtesting and stuff like that. Once you have something like this, you're going to start playtesting and playtesting and playtesting. By playtesting, I mean you're going to be playing this game against yourself several times, and I mean several times. And if you get bored of playing it with yourself, you can play it with friends and say, hey, we're testing this game. If you have any feedback, let me know. I don't care how much you hate the game. Just tell me why you hate it, essentially, and play the game with them. And ultimately they'll say, hey, I feel like I landed on green spaces way too many times in that game, and that was very annoying because I kept doing this because of that. Or, oh hey, my opponents kept landing on blue like a million times. Maybe move that, or remove one of them, or just remove it altogether, or etc. Play around with mechanics like that and get some feedback, and it will allow you to tweak the game until you get perfection. Again, playtesting is where you will find where if you need 6 or 12. So during playtesting, this is where you will play around with the rolls and see if 12 changes the game too much, or if it will hurt the game too much, if it will benefit the game, etc. So I only have a few more tips here for you. The obvious one is figuring out a theme. Now the theme is very difficult to come up with, but it doesn't have to be the most extravagant, exciting thing ever. For example, we have chess, which technically doesn't have a theme, but it also has the theme of like kingdom versus kingdom thing kind of going on. This game over here, I haven't shared this game yet in a video, but this game is Food Fight. It obviously involves food, so the theme is food, cafeteria, what have you. But the point is, if there's a theme there, then it's gonna bring an attachment to the players. The players are gonna attach to that theme. They're gonna be like, oh, I really love food, maybe I want to try this game or something like that. Or heck, I really love kingdoms, maybe I want to try out chess. You can do different things like that and entice the player to play your game. In addition to that, if you have some way to fit a narrative to your game, that will also help you tremendously, because now you're not just moving across the board, now you're trying to save the world, or race your opponent, or fight off dragons and villains and stuff like that as you move across the board, whatever. The point is up to you. Figure out a theme and come up with some kind of narrative. Even if the narrative is really terrible and shit and not really that exciting, as in the case of, hey, we're racing our opponents across the board, that still entices a competitive nature to you, and it definitely allows you to attach yourself to a story and a narrative, which can make the game more fun for roleplay reasons. Next up, when you're going to make a strategy-based game, I definitely think there should be punishments. So, for example, if we move back to chess, probably the best example for a strategy-based game ever, if I move something in the wrong space, my opponent can move a single space and then get me in checkmate immediately. Or if I accidentally move, let's say my rook was right here and my opponent's rook was like right here or something like that, and I wasn't thinking at all, and I moved right here because I was like, oh, I can move here, and then in my next turn I can kill that. Well, now not only can the pawn kill that, but the rook can also kill that now. This is kind of, this looks weird because it's Ponytown, but trust me, these are chess pieces. But yeah, so I made a mistake, and now my opponent gets to punish me tremendously with almost no effort whatsoever. So my tip here to you is, if you're doing something strategy based, kind of look at things like that. Think of like, hey, if my opponent makes this mistake, how much is that gonna hurt them? If it's going to punish them to the point to where they're guaranteed to lose, then your game might be too punishing, and you might want to tweak that and hopefully fix the mechanic just a little bit and figure it out. However, something that punishes them that greatly is not going to be the worst thing ever. For example, in chess, like I showed earlier, if I made that mistake and it was something that put me in checkmate, that was my own fault. I made a mistake, so I should be punished for it. So again, keep in mind, if a player is being punished for making a mistake, then that's not terrible, that's just actually good. That's a good thing. That means you have strategy in play, because you can't make mistakes with a game that's based on luck. And finally, my final tip here for you is a very simple one, very easy one. This is something that you can do at home if you happen to have a checkerboard, chessboard, whatever. Basically, get an 8x8 grid and just play around with it. Just play around with checker pieces, chess pieces, what have you, and just put them on an 8x8 grid and just play around with it. Maybe you want something where, you know, you don't want to use all the checker pieces, so you're like, okay, what would a game of checkers be like if I remove, you know, the front 4 pieces or whatever like that? What would checkers be like now? Also, what would happen if, you know, you moved in every direction instead, but it's still checkers? So you can play around with things like that, and then that will give you ideas, and it will also help you learn a little bit about mechanics and stuff like that, because changing a game of checkers will definitely teach you why certain things may be the way they are. In a way, it's sort of reverse engineering other games. So again, for this checkers example, pieces can now skip over every other black one now. What happens now? Well, now it's next to impossible to capture, or now it's very difficult for players to do certain things, and you can learn from that and be like, oh, so that's why that's not a mechanic in the game. Basically, reverse engineer other games, just play around with the mechanics, remove certain mechanics from other games that you're aware of, and see what happens. Maybe the mechanic is actually a good thing, and you can play around with that for your own game and include it to that. So that is my tips for you. Play around with an 8x8 grid. There's no telling what you can come up with when you do this. Maybe you even want it to where it's just like, okay, players only get 3 pieces to start out with, and they put them in the corners or something like that, and then boom, you have a weird sudden death checkers or something like that. The point is, play around with checkerboards and stuff like that. These are 8x8 grids, by the way, so if you want to do this in Ponytown, or if you want to do it in real life on a piece of paper, just draw it an 8x8 grid. It's fine, it's easy, it's simple, and you can play around with it. These are my tips to you, and I hope that they helped you, and I hope that you enjoyed. So if you did, I make content like this all the time, not necessarily board game related, but I do make board games on the channel. I do make lots of Ponytown related content on the channel, and a lot of Ponytown news on the channel. So if you want to keep up to date with Ponytown news, or if you just want to see some entertaining Ponytown videos, then please do subscribe and stuff like that. Like I said, that's going to do it for the video. Please do like, subscribe, and share, and do all of those wonderful things, because when you do those wonderful things, you get access to wonderful content such as this. But that's not all you get. That's not all you get. You also get to become wonderful yourself. And I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.